This is Turn One Thoughtseize. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Zach.
And this is episode 87, Play More Basics. We had a whole show planned out. Whole show. And then the guilds of Ravnica spoilers started dropping. And I was like, eh.
Come on, man. Bring it.
So we basically scrapped the entire old show, and now we're doing a different show. Before we get to the show, as always, we'll start out with new patron shoutouts. Zach, Daniel W., Daniel K., and Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. I believe everybody has popped into the Discord, but if not, if you can't find it and you need a link, send me a message and I will get it to you. I probably will send it out anyways, just in case. I gotta say, I'm really happy with how the Discord is going.
Yeah, the Discord's been awesome, man.
I recently added it must have been earlier this week. I added the Training Grounds channel. So all of the people that are on the Discord that are interested in sort of general health, fitness kind of stuff, we are doing that. And I'm doing a yoga thing. Daniel, one of the other Daniels, we have like a collection of Daniels. One of the Daniels is going back to doing calisthenics, and so we're all just kind of the people that are interested are just kind of coming together, keep holding each other accountable. Like yesterday, I was like, I'm just gonna go to bed, and then somebody popped in the Training Grounds channel and was like, "Hey, so what's going on with Yoga Day 3?" And I was like, I was gonna go to bed, but I guess I gotta do it now.
Yep.
So I did. It was good though. It's it doesn't take a lot in terms of somebody holding you accountable to be like, oh yeah, okay, I should just do this, because me not wanting to do it is just like a pure concession to laziness. There was nothing about those 20 minutes of me not doing the yoga day thing that was special. Like, I was just going to sit there and screw around on my phone.
Sure, yeah, I mean, seriously, just a little encouragement can go a long way when you're trying to stick to a plan, you know?
So that is that. So we're trying to build the whole player, right? Like, there's it really, feeling better makes a huge difference. Like, if you're trying to perform in a tournament setting, like getting up in the morning, stretching, whatever, go for a little run, do some push-ups, something, like having that as part of your routine has value, right? So we are building those habits together, and it's been very rewarding for me to sort of like see everybody kind of come together and help each other, right? We're all helping each other, and so you should come too. You should come. You're already there, but you the listener, you should also come. We're trying to make you a better person. We're trying to help you be a better person. How about that? That's different. We're not trying to make anybody do anything, because you can't really make somebody do something.
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually agree on that a lot, where it's like, we're not here to like tell you need to do this. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do it. But like, if you want to do it, it can be hard to like hold yourself to this daily grind, right? And just having someone there you can turn to and just be like, hey, I'm going to skip today. I don't feel it. And they're like, nah, man, don't skip. Just knock it out. It really is that push, that little extra push you need to stick to a routine,
Indeed. Playmat pre-order is up. So this is the new sort of Ravnica themed playmat. I made originally I was doing the payments direct. It was sort of convoluted. So I made a store. It's, if you can go to the website. If you go to turn1thoughtseize.com, up in the right-hand corner, there's a button that says merch that will bring you to the shop. If you want to go there directly, it's one thoughtseize.bigcartel.com. The playmat image and all that stuff is there. Choice of signed or unsigned. It's $27 even with domestic shipping. Patrons get a discount. So if you are a patron, hit me up before you order it or after. I'll just kick you back the difference. It's not a big deal. International, let me know in advance so I can figure out the shipping. Because I haven't done a lot of international shipping recently. I used to do a ton of it, but for some reason, I don't know, like airplanes that deliver mail now run on like solid gold or something because shipping rates are insane from like the last time that I really had to send out a lot of stuff.
Sure.
So, but we'll figure it out. So give me a shout. Let me know. We'll work it out. There is more merch stuff in the works. I'm setting up the store through Streamlabs, which I don't know if that's going to be like a permanent thing. The interface is kind of weird. It ties in with the stream. I don't know if it's standalone. We'll see. I really like their version of OBS. Their implementation of some other things is kind of like So I will find a supplier. I'm still looking for somebody to do card sleeves, custom card sleeves. There are not many places that do it. So it's just a weird thing. It's like a niche of a niche of a niche. So, in the works, if there are things that people want to see, whatever, keychains, t-shirts, water bottles. We should do water bottles. Oh man, we should do water bottles for the Training Grounds channel. Boom. Look, it all just falls into place, ties together. That's the housekeeping kind of stuff, I think.
One more housekeeping thing. I was actually a guest on Lords of Limited. It's a limited podcast that appeared 2 weeks ago. We kind of talked about getting into limited from a constructed point of view. So people that listen to this probably more interested in modern. If you're interested in looking into moving towards playing limited or just getting a better feel for limited, that's a good place to spend an hour trying to figure out the transition, I guess.
Okay. Yes, 5 mana removal is playable in limited.
Very much so.
Like Ritual of the Serpent or whatever it was from like Theros was like a real card.
Dude, you got a snake from that one. That was great.
Was it though?
No, probably not.
No. I mean, yes. So many things. No, I guess I feel that though, because there's a lot of times because I'm so used to evaluating cards, not only for constructed, but specifically for modern, which has like even more layers of like requirements to be playable. Like I will sometimes look at a pack and be like, what is this trash? Like literally nothing here is playable. I don't understand why they even printed these cards. And then somebody's like, no, man, a 2/3 for 4 is great. And I'm like, what are you even talking about? And they're like, yeah, everybody else in the entire set is like 1 power. So, this thing's basically a steel wall that also does other stuff. And I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah, I guess. And then you play it, right? Like when you take the format as a sort of bubble, like that creature's great.
Sure.
And then you put it in the draft discard box and you never think about it again.
Sure, yeah. No, I mean, that's actually a topic that came up on the cast, so.
There you go. See? Always thinking. Right. Meta game. There isn't really like a hardcore breakdown, I guess, that we really need to do. Like the decks that we would be like, oh, this deck did well, that deck did well, there's no surprises there. Like Like, good decks are still good, bad decks are still bad. So people still insist on playing bad decks. Like, don't play a bad deck and expect to have good results with it all the time.
Well, the other thing, too, is just the last big event where we'd be drawing information from was a team event. It's Team Unified, so it's hard to really go into the format because it's a different format.
Yeah, Team Unified is a really weird... It should just be called 30% Tron. Right? Like
well, it should have been called 30% Blue-White X Control because that was on every team.
Yes. Yeah. Which I guess kind of segues into the decks that you need to really be thinking about.
Yeah, so the actual metagame, what's sorry.
No, I was just gonna say many of them involve Terminus, which is a deeply offensive card to me.
Oh, I can agree with that on some level, although for me it is a very pleasurable card. I love it.
I understand. No, I understand. I know you do.
But so anyway, what's happening with the metagame right now is it's starting to narrow. And what's happening is there has been kind of this trend that's happened in Standard the last, 2, 3, 4 years even, where, there's this kind of unsolved metagame at the beginning, and then you kind of find a couple tier 2 or 3 decks, like a tier 1 decks, there's like 2 or 3 of them, and they cover each other's weaknesses very well, where like one deck is good against, like very, very good against 50% of the field, and another deck is very, very good against the other 50% of the field. And they might be bad against the other 50%, but, they're kind of 50-50 against each other. And what happens is, half the field can't beat one deck, so it's kind of invalidated. And the other half of the field can't beat the other deck, so it's kind of invalidated. And together they like cover each other's weaknesses and kind of push everything else out. And we're kind of starting to see that in Modern. Now, it's a lot harder because Modern's a much bigger format, but we kind of have this triangle now of Blue-White X decks, mostly Terminus control, although there are variations, but essentially it's Blue-White Planeswalker-based control. Humans, which is just kind of standing in for all aggro at this point, and KCI, which is just the preeminent combo deck. And they all just kind of cover each other's weaknesses very well. They're kind of the best at what they do. They kind of have this nice give and take of being fairly even against each other, and, it's really just kind of made everything else tier 2, and that's just kind of the deck. And the decks that can't beat those decks at all just don't really see any play right now, past round 2 of an event, round 3 of an event. Right. And, decks, you can still kind of play whatever you want in Modern, but if you can't beat those decks, you're just not going to do well in an event, and the later rounds of the event are just all these decks. That's not to say other decks don't exist. Like, Tron, for instance, has a good matchup against some of these decks and can beat some of them. So, it still exists. And, there are other decks kind of creeping in there. Spirits comes to mind, where Spirits is, pretty good against some of these decks. So, and definitely some affinity decks. They're there too, but these decks are kind of doing the, I got your back situation. We're just going to battle each other. And it really is putting a damper on the format at this point. This is quickly becoming one of the less diverse Moderns I've ever played. The last time I remember something that was this extreme, where it was just like a bunch, like some number of decks covering each other's backs, was Twin versus Birthing Pod.
Yep. And it's not the sky is falling, but it is after this season. Realistically, there needs to be some action taken on some front.
Yeah, something for sure needs to change. This is not a sustainable format in the sense that it's going to be fun forever, because it's kind of starting to get solved, honestly, which is weird to say for Modern, but it is getting more towards that point. I mean, it's definitely not there. There is some innovation to be done. There's some learning. There's some adjustments that can definitely be made, but it is more solved than Modern typically is, if you'll follow that. So, there's definitely some changes coming. I can tell you that much. We had a bomb drop in Guilds of Ravnica that Aaron mentioned earlier in the intro, and that's probably going to cause some change. And then there are some other things that could happen. Yeah, I was gonna say the Terminus decks have really made it hard for a bunch of these, fringe creature strategies to exist, and they kind of were where Modern was going when, I don't know, maybe like 3 months ago, it kind of felt like Humans and KCI were just like the only tier 1 decks, and then there were just like other decks. But, it kind of crept to this point where there was, Vengevine and Hollow One, and a bunch of graveyard decks really popping up because they were pretty good against these other two decks, and there was, a bunch of innovation happening, but Terminus just kind of knocked all of that out, and now it's really just Humans and KCI and Terminus decks.
If you think that this is a problem, then you're correct. First of all, I think that there is the solution, or the way that people are sort of like viewing the solutions that are theoretically on the table is a matter of perspective in terms of like what you think the problem is. I think personally the problem is that Terminus is an offensive Magic card. Brainstorm is a ridiculous effect, and having those two things together in the form of Jace and Terminus is imbalancing to the point that it pushes out not all, but like every creature strategy that can't reliably win through disruption on turn 3 is gonna have not a great time.
Well, so like I don't necessarily agree with that, because if the format was just Jace Terminus decks, it would be very easy to attack this deck. Like, for instance, Blue-Red Storm has a very, very positive matchup against Blue-White Control. Like, the Storm deck is really, really good against it, but unfortunately for the Storm deck, they're just so bad against Humans. It's such an uphill battle to beat the Humans deck, especially like a Humans player that comes prepared. And, that's kind of what I was getting at before, was like, these decks are just so good at what they do. They're just like covering each other's backs perfectly right now. So I think getting to your point, like, is there a problem? Yeah, I think there is for long-term health. I mean, right now, like, is there a problem with the format? No, it's still fairly new in this triangle, I guess, and we could potentially find answers to it, but, just judging off how this has worked in Standard, it is not an easy problem to solve, because these decks balance each other out so well.
Well, so savvy listeners will remember my previous arguments re unbanning Jace. And I said that the problem is not necessarily that he is sort of like objectively too good, which I would still argue he kind of is. It's that he defines the format in terms of Jace versus not Jace. And that is exactly what happened. So there's a Jace deck, there's two not Jace decks, and that's your 3 decks, right? Like, if we're making the triangle of like Humans, Blue-White Control, and some kind of affinity, maybe like Hardened Scales has like a good combo.
It's not affinity, it's KCI.
Or KCI rather. I'm sorry.
Just like very clearly KCI.
A tripod is an extremely unstable structure.
Well, tripods are very stable structures.
Well, until you remove one of the legs.
Yeah, if you remove one of the legs, it tips, right?
Right. That's the problem, right? That's why having the 3 decks be Humans, KCI, and Blue-White Control is a nightmare. Unless, right, it's twin all over again, right? It's like twin, pod, or affinity. Those are the decks that you can play. That's bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a short-term problem. Like, I think it's a long-term problem. Like, I think in the short term, It's a fine format to.
I think it's a medium term problem, and that term is this modern PTQ season.
Yeah, I see. No, I think in one season it's totally fine because it's not that played out. Like this is a new development. It's not like these decks have been dominating for a while. It's like this is kind of just starting to happen. So like calling this like, a problem that like ruined this format. Like I don't agree with that at all. I don't even think it's close to that yet. But like I could definitely see it getting there if nothing changed for a long period of time. If that makes sense. Well, like the twin birthing pod thing lasted multiple years.
Yes, I am acutely aware of how long it lasted.
I mean, yeah, that's fair, but like we're not even at like 3 months yet. Like this is new.
Right. Well, and modern is new, right? Like that's the other thing is if this is the cycle that we see, right? 2 or 3 decks rise to the top, they become the only valid choices. We know how that cycle ends because it has now been around long enough that it has gone through that cycle once. We can go, oh, this is what's happening. Instead of waiting, we can proactively manicure the shrub so that it keeps growing instead of waiting until everybody is pissy and doesn't want to play anymore, and attendance drops, and GP attendance drops, and LGS attendance drops, and people are like, fix it or else. Like, there's no reason to let it get to that point, because we already know what's happening.
Well, I think there is a reason to let it get to that point, but let's go over the solutions to this perceived problem, because while I'm not going to go as far as saying that there is a problem right this instant, I think, like, left unchecked, this will be a problem, 3, 6 months, a year, something like that, where the format just won't change because these decks are just covering each other so well.
So obviously, in my head, there's one main offender, which is Jace, and it is not necessarily Jace as a card. It is Jace in conjunction with the Miracles mechanic. Like, Brainstorm is too good for Legacy, but they can't ban Brainstorm in Legacy because the only reason to play Legacy is to play Brainstorm. So that's fine. That's a Legacy problem. And it should be a Legacy problem. And it can stay a Legacy problem. We don't need that problem. And it's like when Top got banned, right? Top is just an obnoxious card selection card. Top with Terminus and Counterbalance is let's take every round to time. So what they arguably could/should have done is left Top, banned Counterbalance and Terminus, and then you can still play your dumb Miracles deck. It's just not as good, and you have to actually have a win con. Like, no game should encourage not losing as a viable strategy. That should not be a way to play the game.
Like, I
because it's not playing the game.
No, I disagree with that completely. I think, like, if your strategy is don't lose and you have some sort of win con, I think that's fine. Like, I don't want to stifle the way people play. I don't think we should be here telling them, like, the way you're playing is not fair if if people enjoy it and it's not, like, too bad. Where it's like, I can see it. It's like Counterbalance Top is too good. Like, that is just like your opponent doesn't get to do anything for the rest of the game and the game goes on forever. Like, that's miserable. But like in Modern, it's not that. It's not they're locked out. Like, there's stuff you can do, and I think, like, the way you're looking at this is like a little biased towards Jace, because in my mind, part of the issue here is still just how busted KCI is.
We'll get to that. Right now, I'm specifically talking about Terminus, like, and how it is enabled by Jace. So
Well, Terminus is too good, and it's part of the issue is just like the tuck on the bottom of the library mechanic just has no counterplay to it. Like, it is just the perfect answer for every counterplay to a wrath that exists in the entire format. Where it's like there's like Selfless Spirit to stop, like indestructible effects like Supreme Verdict. There's these like counter spells to stop Wrath of God, stuff like that. And like you can make your guys indestructible, but like none of these keywords work. So like the only real answer to Terminus is instant speed discard, which they don't print and is like very hard to use against like a blue-white control player. Like it's hard to find effective instant speed discard. And it's part of the reason why humans still exist, by the way, is that it effectively can be instant speed discard. Sure. But past that, it's counter spells. So it's like you need to have one of these things, and it's really hard to have all of those things, I guess.
Well, so you have, right, like the reason that humans gets to even remotely exist in this world is because there's no stifle, so you can't counterspell an Ether Vial activation, and they're already running 4 caverns. So you get to kite sail freebooter the Terminus out of their hand and hope that they don't have some other way to answer that.
Yeah, or meddling mage, or
sure.
Like humans has a bunch of ways to deal with this. That's why it's still existing as a deck.
So the problem with Miracle as a mechanic in the sort of expanded universe of Eternal formats is that it does not follow the timing rules for the spell type. A 1 mana beyond unconditional wrath, like that's even the thing, right? Like it is unconditional in the sense that there is no defense against it. So having that be either a 5 mana effect, which already exists, Hallowed Burial, like and that is also like in other dirtly control decks, they will play that card. Like, that card is seeing play currently. Not a ton of play.
Hallowed Burial?
Yeah.
Oh, be real, dude. No one's played Hallowed Burial in years.
Dude, it has seen play recently.
Dude, seriously, nobody's played Hallowed Burial since Pod was a deck. It was good against Pod. Like, that was the reason people played it back in the day, was that it was good against Pod. But, like, I don't disagree with you, because Hallowed Burial is appropriately costed at 5 mana. Like,
correct.
That's like the amount of mana you should pay for that effect, and it is a sorcery. Like 1 mana for that effect at instant speed is kind of approaching like ancestral recall levels of like cost reduction, where it's like the appropriate mana cost for a draw 3. There's a lot of like 5 mana sorcery speed draw 3s, and that card's fine. Like 5 mana sorcery speed draw 3, totally fine to have exist. It's a cool card. By all means, go for it. But like 1 mana instant speed draw 3 is a different beast altogether. And it's kind of the same thing with Terminus here. It's like when you miracle it on their turn, it's
when you opt into Terminus, that is a problem. That is an effect that, regardless of whatever like internet complainer is going to be like, oh, this is perfect, it's totally fine, 10 times out of 10 that person is the person that is opting into Terminus during somebody else's like begin attacker phase and being like, yep, this is great.
Well, so like, I don't know,
and I'm sure it feels good. It
does feel good, but like the point, like that's not the main issue. Like the issue is that it's like with Jace too, because when like Terminus and instant speed card draw were legal long before Jace was unbanned, and they saw 0 play because it wasn't consistent enough. And the card Terminus at 6 mana is not good. Like, it's just strictly worse than Hallowed Burial, right?
Correct.
So like, it's not like it's not great that way. So it's like when it gets stuck in your hand, and trust me, I've played these decks. When you open a hand with like 2 Terminus in it, your hand looks terrible, and you are going to lose that game a lot of the time. Now, when that hand draws a Jace and you get to put Terminus on top or back on top of your deck, things get out of hand. So being able to set up miracles is approaching the scary point of of Modern, I guess, where it's like, well, it's possible that this is too good. We don't know yet for sure, but it is possible that that is too good.
If it is too good for Legacy, it's too good for Modern.
But it's not too good for Legacy. Like, in Legacy, you have better enablers, and the Terminus decks aren't even that good.
Right, because they don't have top anymore.
Yeah, but they have the actual card Brainstorm. It's like a one-mana way to enable it, like, both to draw it and to set it up.
Yes. Well, and also, like, the fact that Miracles is not the undisputed best deck doesn't mean that it doesn't still, like, do well and people don't play it.
I mean, Miracles is good in Legacy.
Because it does, and they do.
Miracles is good in Legacy, but that is a confluence of, like, other events. Like, I don't want to, like, I think the fact that it's good enough to see play in Legacy is an indicator. Like, I'll give it to you, but, like, the fact that in Legacy you also get the card Brainstorm, which is way too good, like, you don't have that in Modern, so that is, like, definitely, hard to make it's an apples to oranges comparison, I think, in that sense. And also, having Force of Will is outrageous, so that is kind of different, but at the same time, like, I do agree with you that, like, the way it is in Modern right now, this could be too good. Now, that said, it's not like you can't adjust to this effect. It is possible to adjust this effect.
Yes, you can slow down your clock to the point that you can't possibly win the game by holding your creatures back to protect them from Terminus.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, you can play the card Vendilion Click more, which is good against Miracle triggers. You can, and people already have started playing Gadok, which, like, stops you from casting it. I mean, these are kind of extreme, but it's not like there are not answers. And additionally, like, there are cards that let you shuffle your opponent's library. So it's like, Jace is, like, kind of predictable in the sense that, like, when they brainstorm with a Jace and they're playing a Terminus deck, like, there's a decent chance they put a Terminus on top of their library. You can Field of Ruin them and make them shuffle it away if that's, like, where you need to adjust.
Yes, well, you can Field of Ruin, and then with the Field of Ruin trigger on the stack, they can opt into Terminus and then shuffle their library.
I mean, maybe. Like, that's a lot of mana.
Is it?
Yeah, they played a Jace, put it on top, and then you Field of Ruin them, and then they opted and then cast Terminus. Like, that's 6 mana at least. Like, they could have just cast the Terminus at that point.
Yeah, but why would they?
Because
they can cast it for 1 mana, draw a card, and still have a Jace.
I mean, yes, that play is better. Like, but all these decks, like, all these decks in Modern have nut draws. Like, yeah, when you hit that nut draw, that's powerful. Like, the other thing I think needs to be said about this is that there has been a very long time where Control is just not viable in Modern.
Yes.
So, like, the fact that Control is viable now, like, I don't know. This is just, to me, this is just, like, your bias shining through on your hate for blue.
It is to a certain extent, but, like, in a completely, like, non-hyperbolic sense, from a balance perspective, trying to thread the needle of, like, allowing people to play, like, slow as molasses dumb control decks and having those control decks be so good that they overtake the format is almost impossible. And, like, that is what we're seeing, because they're like, oh, well, people aren't playing these control decks. Okay, great. So let's print, like, better card selection, card draw stuff. So, like, they printed Opt, and that, like, didn't really move the needle. And then they were like, okay, well, we'll print Search for Azcanta. And then, like, that kind of helped, but it still didn't really move the needle. And then they were like, well, this Jace reprint is coming up. If we're going to try and have Jace be in the format, we need to do it at a time when there is supply so that it doesn't become a $400 card. So if you're gonna pull that trigger, then that's the time, right? You have, like, a very narrow window to do that, and they did that, and that's fine. Like, that is the correct choice if that's the choice you're gonna make. And then people were like, oh, it's not that good. And then the sort of Jace haters of the world were like, just wait, because people will figure it out. Like, it'll take them a little while, but they will figure it out.
Well, so,
and then
look, Aaron,
Teferi got printed, and so then you have, right, we've gone from, like, this isn't really great to the card draw got a little better, the selection got a little better, like, we got Brainstorm, and then you're like, oh, we're also going to print a fairy, and then they just like turned on the fire hose, and they're like, guess what? You get to Miracle Terminus at instant speed. You get to untap Search for Azcanta every turn. And so you can basically like search for, you can impulse every turn, and just like, that's too much. Pick 3 of those effects.
See, like,
and one of them can't be Jace or Terminus.
Hold on. So like, no, I disagree. Or the other. I disagree with this a lot, and here's why. First of all, none of this is like more offensive to me than you're just dead on turn 3, because KCI is like, it's like, yes, all of these things like end the game after like turn 4, 5, or 6. It's like a very proactive way to end the game, but it's the same thing as KCI. It's just dragged out over turns where you have to play. But it's like on KCI, it's like they just cast a spell on turn 3 and you lost immediately. Like, that is just something that deck does. And
well, so you hopefully think you may have lost, but it will then take them 15 minutes to figure out if you're actually dead.
I mean, I agree, but it's the same thing where it's like you have to sit there and watch them do it. And yes, like, the control deck feels miserable to play against when it's winning, but it's like you could concede. Like, you're not coming back from them having like Jace, Teferi, and Azcanta flipped. Like, they're just so far ahead at that point that it just doesn't matter what you're going to do. And it's like you can concede at any point. Like, that is something people should do more, and we've touched on that. But in my opinion, the one thing that is stopping me from saying that this is a problem is that it's still so new. Like, I think Control has been bad for so long that people just kind of assume Control can't actually be good in Modern. And what's happening is right now Control is actually very good. Like, it's one of the best decks in the format pretty clearly, in my opinion. And people haven't adjusted yet. So it's like, look, if people take the time to adjust and they start playing messed up cards, because there are messed up cards you can play to beat this deck. Like, I don't know if you've ever cast a Boil against a Control deck, but that's outrageous. That card's ridiculously unfair against a Control player. It's like, nice Terminus, you have no more lands. And
sure, okay, no, keep going.
I mean, like, there are adjustments that can be made. Now, if people start making these adjustments and the deck is still too good, then yes, let's ban something. But until, like, you give people a chance to properly identify that it is one of the best decks, and then let them try to make the adjustments and see what happens from there, I'm not going to let you say we need to ban it, because we do need to see what happens. Like, you need to see it play out.
Okay, we have to wait until the format. Well, no, what I'm saying is there's no reason not to act, right? Like,
well, there is a reason not to act.
Sure, there is. If somebody's going to set off a powder keg and you're like, okay, yep, I see the fuse, it's going, right? Like, you know what happens.
Well, no, but that,
when the fuse gets the powder keg is that it explodes. It's not.
Well, no, but in my opinion, that's just a bad analogy, because like, banning cards is a real cost. Like, one, Control hasn't been viable in a long time, so the fact that Control is viable is actually good in the sense that it balances the format a little bit. So it's like, if you want to nuke Control from orbit completely, the way it was before, then maybe that's right. Maybe that is the right thing for the format. But, like, we haven't been in a spot where Control was, like, actually very good in Modern, so you don't know that it's actually for sure a problem to the format. And then, like, on top of that, like, banning people, like, people just bought these Jaces. Like, they just bought Jace because it was in this new set. Like, banning $400 worth of, like, Jaces out of someone's deck, that is a real cost. Like, that is a huge hit to consumer confidence.
Sure.
Like, it's not the type of like, again, like, I don't think it's necessarily wrong to ban them after, like, the proper precautions have been taken, but it's not the type of thing where it's just like, oh yeah, that looks too good, let's pull the trigger. It's like, you really have to make sure that, like, when we're going to tell you can't play with these cards you just spent a bunch of money on, that you really shouldn't be able to. Like, it's actually detrimental to the entire format that you're playing with them, right?
Yeah, which is why we should ban Terminus first. And then if the deck's still too good, we'll figure it out.
All right,
but,
that's
like, yeah, because that's zero cost, right? Like, you don't get to play with this one, like, offensive affront to the game that cost you 75 cents. Like, if that's the argument that if the the line of argument that you're going to take is that like the monetary cost is that we should be held hostage by someone's completely discretionary choice to spend money freely that they chose on a hobby that is completely optional, then sure. Like if we're going down that road, then when they ban Terminus, you can send them to me and I'll send you a check for $1.50 and everybody will be happy. In the meantime, there's no reason to hold literal millions of people play experience and tournament experience hostage because they tried to like do an experiment and be like, all right, control players, like have your day in the sun. That's
see, I disagree. Like I think that is just like your argument through like the rose-colored glasses of like you hate control, because honestly, like I don't think control is that good. Like I think
I love control. Right? Think about the decks that I play.
Well, but
right?
this is like a different.
Rack is a control deck. It's a resource control deck, but functionally, it does the same thing.
I mean, yes,
keeps you from playing the game.
But like, is Terminus more offensive than Ensnaring Bridge? Like honestly,
yeah, absolutely.
Why? Why is it more offensive?
I can't. Because
they both completely invalidate creatures.
Because I can't cast Ensnaring Bridge at instant speed and end up net plus cards.
But you don't need to do it like in. Well, first of all, you don't end up net plus cards with Terminus. You still just cast the Terminus. Like opt into Terminus is not net plus cards. It's just like you're drew you a Terminus and you cast the Terminus. So like it was just one card.
Okay, sure.
But also like Terminus invalidated the whole board right there.
That's the smallest part of my argument.
Well, but I agree.
But I will concede that point.
I agree that, but like Terminus invalidates the whole board right now. Ensnaring Bridge invalidates your attack phase for the rest of the game. Like you just don't get this part of the game. You know what I'm saying? Like they're both pretty offensive to me. But
play more Noble Hierarchs.
All right. I mean, you see that's what I'm saying about Terminus here is like let people find out if they can adapt to it. And like we thought, remember when Lantern Control won the Pro Tour? We thought it was offensive and like too good, and it's not even seeing play now. And it's like, well, maybe, and like it's the same thing with Death Shadow. Like Death Shadow ruled the format for like 2 months, and like yeah, it was too good for like a 2-month span. But now like nobody even plays it, and it's like we have to give this deck like a window to see if it actually can hold on. Like that is something you actually need to do. So like I think that like your argument of like we could ban these things, like yes we could, but like you need to see what happens first, because you can't just like pull the trigger right away and then like have it have been not an issue to begin with, or like something that would have been solved without you doing anything.
So we should ban Terminus in Modern. They should ban Terminus in Legacy, ban Counterbalance, and unban Sensei's Divining Top in Legacy.
And please no.
Hey, look, that format isn't my problem. Okay?
Well, then why are we like advocating for it? Like,
because
I get that you want to ban Terminus, but like I'm telling you, if you want to ban Terminus, give it 3 to 4 months, and we'll come back and evaluate. And if it's still a problem, then we can ban it. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Like I said, it's like you're the patient has a fever and you're like, well, you know what? Let's just wait and see. And maybe they'll die, but you know, at least we gave them a fair shake.
Well, no, but
we have the cure.
But there are legitimate costs to doing this. Like there legitimately are costs to like any banning hurts consumer confidence. It does. It's like if you're gonna make a banning, like you need to be sure. So it's like I'm not saying we shouldn't ban this. I'm saying like you need to be sure. Like you need to do your homework and be sure, because like like Turnus might not be the real problem. Like we don't know. Like you could be saying like, look, this person has cancer. We have the cure. Let's give it to them. And it's like, well, maybe they don't have cancer. Maybe they have some other disease, and like your cure is gonna make it worse. You know, like you need to take the time and like properly diagnose it. But anyway,
the other thing too is like we don't have all the information, right? Like if we at least had all the Magic Online info, then I would feel more comfortable about like making a serious definitive statement. I do think that there's like very small theoretical cost to banning Terminus that like instantly makes the format better.
I mean, like, I just disagree completely. I don't know. I just think that this is just like way too hasty on this. Like, it hasn't even like really won events yet.
Wait, what are you talking about?
It hasn't yet. Like, it's done well in some events, but it's not like Terminus has won every event for the past like 3 months. Like, if anything, the deck putting up numbers is still humans, and KCI has been way more dominant.
We've already spoken on the KCI issue. Do you remember we just did a whole episode called "Ban KCI"?
Well, I remember, and now we're talking about banning Terminus, and like KCI is not even the issue right now. You know, like it's still an issue, but it's like that's not the one you want to ban. So all I'm saying is like let's give this some time. Let's sort itself out. But I think we've hit on that enough. That got kind of contentious. That might be good. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens with that. I think what we should talk about, like, I think it's clear if we want to do bans, like, my thing on the bans is like, okay, if we decide bans are necessary, I think that's fine. You can make the argument bans are necessary, but I think you have to do it right, because I think if you do bannings right now, you could really screw up the format. And I think part of what you need to do is you need to ban something from all 3 of these decks. You can't just like my problem with you saying you just ban Terminus is like it just puts you back in the spot where humans and KCI are the only decks. So it's like you can't just ban Terminus. You need to ban like strategically to make it so that the like other decks exist again, I guess. And it's like I think if you want to do bannings, you need to look at some amount of like we're banning Aether Vial, Cavern of Souls, Unclaimed Territory, something to hurt humans. And humans, by the way, is offensive in its own right that they get to play 5 colors just with no life cost. Like it's kind of outrageous.
Yeah, I think Ancient Ziggurat would probably be the place that I would start.
I mean, maybe it's like you can make an argument for any of them, and it's just all like it's just offensive. They just hit that critical mass. It's just like offensive that they can do it. Like honestly, I think it's Aether Vial. Aether Vial makes that deck way too good in my opinion. But regardless,
there's no reason. I don't even think that's remotely on the table.
What?
There's no reason to ban Aether Vial.
Aether Vial was banned in Standard. Like, when Modern was made, people thought it was going to be too good for Modern. It should have started on the ban list. Like, Aether Vial is, like, a ridiculous Magic card.
Right, it is. But, like, all it really does is enable this exact deck and then a bunch of other, like, Tier 2 decks.
Aether Vial is ridiculous, dude. It's like a Soul Ring for creatures. Do you think Soul Ring would be okay in Modern?
No. That's not even apples to oranges. That's like apples to elephants.
It's not though. Like when your Aether Vial has 3 counters on it, like yeah, it's not the same thing as fast mana, but like you waited and then you got a Soul Ring, and now your Soul Ring also gives your creatures flash and uncounterable. Like it's kind of outrageous.
Sure. And as soon as Merfolk takes over the format, sure, we can absolutely ban Aether Vial.
Well, Merfolk did take over the format. It's just in the form of humans. It's like the same style of deck. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that, like, I think you need to hit something from all 3 of these decks if that's the route we're going to go down. Because I think if you hit, like, anything from just one of them, the other 2 just take their place, and I don't know.
Yes. So it's my picks, like, my watch list, I guess that's kind of, like, where we can go with this, like, to make it constructive. Because certainly, like, I have my opinions. We can complain about it. We can complain back and forth about, like, what we think. I think what it comes down to is, like, we revise our like unofficial watch list, and I think the cards that go on there from this discussion are Terminus, Ancient Ziggurat, and KCI. Like, I think those 3 cards are probably the ones that I would be like, yep, because they specifically hit those decks. They do not kill them except for KCI, but KCI can die. Like we've made that mistake with Grape Shot. Like, you can't just ban everything else because people will still play it. So just pull off the Band-Aid.
Okay. So if that's your watch list, that's what you want to do, that's fine with me. That you want those to be your watch list. I'm not saying we should ban those right now. I am, in fact, heavily against banning anything right now. But my approach is, if you think this is a problem, I again think we should start with unbans, because unbans come with a lot of positives. I think it's like a much better approach. It's less heavy-handed, and I think part of what's going on is these decks cover each other's backs really well because nothing really challenges them. But if you just if you just throw a new variable in and it just like completely changes the landscape of the format, these decks aren't going to balance each other anymore, and like they might not be problems, so you don't know. So I think the beauty of unbans is you get to kind of make up to the people that really felt hurt when their cards got banned. To some extent, it's not, a perfect answer, but like I know a lot of people that played Birthing Pod, for instance, that would be very, very happy if Birthing Pod got unbanned. And the other thing is they get to sell these cards again, which is just good for them in master sets. Like we saw with Jace, like it was a net positive for the company Wizards of the Coast that they got to sell Jace, right? Which in turn is like good for everybody because they get to keep playing this game. It still thrives, blah, blah, blah. But I was going to say, I think there is a list of cards that we can consider for unbans. And I'm not advocating unban all of these. That would be chaos. But I do think these cards could be considered and, like, with some testing, could be released back into the wild. I'm not sure necessarily that that's okay yet with all of them, but I kind of came up with 5 cards, categories of cards in one case, that we can start looking at again. And the first one's Birthing Pod. I think we touched on this before with Birthing Pod, but the problem with Birthing Pod always was that there was no good answer to Birthing Pod. It was like your catch-all answer that was just played ubiquitously in the format before was Abrupt Decay, and it didn't hit Birthing Pod, even though Birthing Pod cost 3 because of Phyrexian mana. It was kind of outrageous. The catch-all answers now all hit Birthing Pod, between like Kolaghan's Command, Abrade, Terminus actually just is very good against Birthing Pod decks. Doesn't actually hit the pod, but the point remains it's good against them. Sure. And another card we're going to talk about later, which is this bomb, which is the new Abrupt Decay, if you will, and it will actually hit Birthing Pod. So in my mind, Birthing Pod is one of the safest cards right now. It's still obviously a very powerful card, but I do think it's the type of card we could start considering at this point.
Yeah, my opinion on this has changed in the sense that, like, sure, unban Birthing Pod, like, who even cares? I think it would be a non-card, so sure, unban it. Like, who cares?
Yeah, I think it's better than non-card. Like, I think it still is a format player, but I don't think it's any longer in the stratosphere of like way too good. Like, I don't think it's going to be winning every modern GP for like a 2-year stretch like it did for the time before it got banned, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, but there are more answers. It is like way too slow in terms of like the sort of the field as it is. So that's, whatever. Like I said, if it was unbanned, I doubt it would see much play. Except for like people who were like, oh man, I remember when this deck was great, and they play it and it sucks and they go do something else.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that happening. I'm still of the opinion that it would be better than that, but not that much better, if that makes sense. Like, I think like if you unban Birthing Pod right now and came up with a good Birthing Pod list, it's just a deck in Modern. Probably like tier 2, something like that. I don't know. Maybe if you like really put in a ton of work with it, it could be, low tier 1, tier 1.5. But I don't think it would
be better Kiki Cord.
Yeah, and I don't think it's any longer just like clear format defining all-star like it was when it got banned, I guess.
Right.
All right, next card. What do we got here?
Stoneforge. Like, once again, whatever. Like, it's boring, and it leads to very bad, like, repetitive, obnoxious gameplay. But once again, like, if we're doing like a United Nations style, like a negotiation, and you're like, sure, we'll give you like these blue-white control cards and, you know, just give us back Stoneforge Mystic and Birthing Pod, like, sure, take them. Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually want to see Stoneforge Mystic unbanned with, like, I don't want to see the format right now with just Stoneforge legal. I think it might be too good just because the blue-white decks are already very good, and it's just another good tool they get. So I'm a little scared of it in that sense, but Stoneforge is different than like the current decks. And in fact, like if you look at Legacy, you don't really see Miracles decks playing Stoneforge. Like the modern Miracles deck, like the blue-white control deck, is very similar to the Legacy Miracles deck. Like obviously there are differences and there, you know, are better cards in the Legacy deck and whatnot, but you don't see them playing the same card because they are at heart different strategies. Where Stoneforge is like kind of like an aggressive control card. I mean, it's a 2-mana creature, right? It's like a 2-mana creature you play out, and the control deck now is busted because of how good Terminus is, right? So it's like those do not synergize. You don't want 2-mana creatures in Terminus generally. So
because it's not, but it's not a 2-mana creature. It's a 2-mana tutor for Batterskull that then plays like as suspend 1. Put Batterskull onto the field uncounterable.
Yeah, but like the other thing too is like now there are just answers for Batterskull. It's not like Batterskull is just game over against a lot of these decks. It's like, again, it's like the same thing as Birthing Pod. It's like, well, you couldn't answer it before because everyone was playing Abrupt Decay, and you'd have to Abrupt Decay the germ, and they'd like finally do it. It's like, no, now I can just Cold against command your Batterskull, or now I can Abrade your Batterskull, or now I can cast a card we're going to talk about earlier or later and just destroy your Batterskull. Like the problem is answerable, I guess.
Sure. Unless they have open mana, and then like because they never tap out, right? Like that's we're not talking about that kind of control.
Well,
we're talking about like I always have 7 mana open so that I can like Cryptic Opt Terminus, and then
sure, yeah, like
and with Dispel backup, like that's the deck that we're talking about. We're not talking about like I tap out every turn and play some Haymaker that like you can't beat.
Sure. I mean, I get it. Like, Stoneforge Mystic will be good. It's obviously banned for a reason, but it like my point is that it's not like there aren't answers at this point. Like, there's stuff you can do. Like, another thing that comes up a lot in Legacy is you cast your Stoneforge, you get a Batterskull, and then someone casts a hand card, like a hand disruption spell, and takes it out of your hand, and then you just like you 2-for-1 them, but like your 2-for-1 is you got a 1/2, which isn't really. It's like a 1.5-for-1 essentially, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So like. Yeah, I mean it's good. Like I'm not gonna sit here and tell you Stoneforge Mystic sucks. It's definitely a good card, but at the same time, it's not like 2 mana. I win the game on the spot against the format. Like it's good against some decks, and other decks don't care about it, and other decks can answer it, and it's just a card that you know is played and stuff happens. You know,
right?
All right, enough on Stoneforge. Another deck we could consider at this juncture for an unbanning is Splinter Twin. I don't want to unban Splinter Twin. That's just my personal thing. You know I love blue cards. I am not super into seeing Splinter Twin unbanned right now. I'm not convinced it would still be too good for Modern, but I think like on the list, this is the last one I would unban.
You can't see it, but I'm raising my hand. I'm respectfully raising my hand like a kid in a school class. Because you're 100% wrong, and I have proof.
Wait, what?
So like, remember I did on Twitter. I was like, "Oh man, like we should do a put up or shut up league where like we can run these decks." And Star City is doing that,
sure.
and that's great because it saves so much production time. So like Todd Anderson, a player that I greatly respect and an all-around good guy, and Todd Stevens, once again, a great player and a all-around good guy, are like running through some of these right now. And like I said, Twin versus Humans would be an embarrassing blowout, and it would be like Humans didn't even exist. And then people were like, no, you know, Humans is great, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. They played it out, and it was as though like the cards on the other side of the table were just like from a different game. We're just like, oh, yep, Deceiver Exarch Twin kill you. Oh, yeah, well, I sided at the combo this game, so then I just murdered you. Like, it was 3-0, easy game, easy life. Humans, like, the moment that Splinter Twin gets unbanned, humans goes away.
See,
there's your 1,500. Like, you want to complain about 4 Jaces getting banned? Here's your $1,500 deck that literally is unplayable.
see, I disagree with that, because one of the things that like they're not taking into account is that they're testing a deck that is in today's metagame the way it's built now against a deck that would be format defining without changing any of the cards from the deck the way it's built now. And it's like, yeah, a deck not prepared for Twin, like the fact Twin exists, is going to lose to Twin. That's why Twin is banned. It was hard to beat when you were prepared for it. When you're not prepared for it, you're just gonna get smashed. And like that is exactly what I would expect to happen. But I think like if humans was focused on beating Twin, they could, be playing like main deck dismembers. Like that is something that the deck can do that would give
They're
it game.
already playing main deck dismembers.
No, they're not. Humans doesn't play main deck dismember.
Oh, they should be.
Well, they're not.
Some of the builds are.
I have not seen a humans deck play main deck dismember.
I have seen it. They play 2 on the side right now.
Yeah, they play 2 on the side. So that's my point, is like the deck is not built for Twin, and yes, it's gonna get smashed by Twin. Now, like I agree with you, I think Twin is too good, and I don't think the results in that are like that far off, because I honestly think Twin is very good, and I'm scared of Twin with Jace. But at the same time, I think it's the type of deck that could be considered. Again, I'm going to put it at the bottom of this list, and I think we can agree on that. Like, all right, the next card we have on the list, and this is a card type. Honestly, what scares you more, Aaron? The fact that Twin would be illegal, or the fact that the artifact lands would be unbanned?
That's just not even on the table. Like we've covered this. I continue to be confused as to why you think this would be okay.
Well, I think it would be okay because, one, you would ban Mox Opal, because Mox Opal being legal with artifact lands is outrageous. But like if artifact lands got unbanned and Mox Opal went, then I think these cards are just fine for Modern, honestly.
Okay, sure. In that outrageous hypothetical that like involves the banning of another high profile card, sure.
Well, like the other thing too is like artifact lands are good, but it's like it's not like there aren't answers to artifact lands. Now, they're not great, but like Field of Ruin does exist. And the other thing is like if you have a deck built of all artifact lands and you play against the card Stony Silence, you're gonna have a bad time. Like the decks that play artifacts now have ways to make mana through Stony Silence. If your deck is all artifact lands and your opponent casts a Stony Silence, you're just stone cold done.
Sure, but you wouldn't do that.
But you might. I don't know.
But you would deserve to lose at that point. Like,
so what you're saying? Okay, so past that, what you're saying is you think Twin is better than artifact lands to be unbanned.
No, I think that is a false equivalency.
Well, I'm asking you right now. What would you rather see unbanned? Just straight up, nothing changed. Twin or artifact lands?
Nothing.
That's not any. No. Pick one. I'm not letting you out of this. You get to unban Twin, or you get to unban artifact lands. Which one's coming off the ban list?
Artifact lands.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of extreme, but I don't know. I think these are things we need to start considering in the format. Mox Opal is offensive in KCI, and I think if you wanted to ban Mox Opal to make KCI less explosive, I think that is a route you could consider in Modern. And I think if you banned Mox Opal, like keeping decks like Hardened Scales Affinity and just normal Affinity and KCI at a power level that is consistent with them existing still, like unbanning Tree of Tails is something you could do.
Sure.
Again, I don't know if that's necessarily
I'm surprised you don't have Green Sun on here.
Green Sun is also one. I missed that for sure. Green Sun is one.
The fact that you put Summer Bloom on here, which is so far beyond that is a known beyond a known quantity. Like that, get that out of here. The Summer Bloom isn't even the light from the discussion of unbanning Summer Bloom will take 5,000 years to reach the Earth. That's not even in this universe.
Okay. I think
Like,
you're wrong
green-
about that for one reason.
Please, God, tell me what is the possible reason that we could unban a card that on camera went from having 0 permanence in play on turn 2, making no plays, to winning the game.
Well, so Summer Bloom is only good with bounce lands. Like, would you agree that the card Summer Bloom is horrible when you're not playing the bounce lands?
It's still pretty good.
It's not. Summer Bloom was a terrible card the entire history of Modern until they found that it worked with Amulet and bounce lands, right? I mean, do you not agree with that? So
I mean, it was legal.
it was legal and nobody played it because it's not a good card. But
Sure.
when you combine it in this Amulet, bounce land, Primeval Titan shell, it was way too good, right? But when it was way too good, there was not a 2-mana instant speed way to kill bounce lands in the format. So I think that is something that could be reevaluated. Now, it might still be too good, but that is the type of thing that would make you go, huh, maybe this is okay now.
No, it does not.
I'm just saying it could. It could.
No, request denied. That's we're not even going to dignify that. So Green Sun, sure, whatever. You want a Green Sun for 0? Get your stupid Dryad Arbor and have it get killed. Like, sure, that's fine.
Okay, I miss Green Sun, and I'm gonna own that. Green Sun can be unbanned. Let's get that out.
Sure.
Let's let people have that one.
All right. So,
Well, hold on. I would say though that I'm not. I don't want to see like Green Sun and Birthing Pod come off at the same time. Well, I
No.
think either are fine to be unbanned. I would like to see one come off before the other, and then evaluate after that.
sure. Yeah, like I said, I'm will in the non-negotiation that we're having, like, if you want to take away all the awful control cards and,
Well, we're not taking away any of these control cards. They're still going to exist. We're just giving them stuff to challenge them.
literally nothing on the ban list that is not completely obviously game destroyingly broken does anything to check any of these cards.
What do you mean, like the Terminus decks?
Yeah.
You don't think Summer Bloom would be good against them?
I think it would be good on the play if they didn't also like just have every conceivable answer.
I don't know, man. I think some of these cards could be like pretty good against control. I tell you what, I think Twin would also be pretty good. I would be terrified of decks with artifacts lands. I guess I have Stony Silence. I don't know. The point is that like when these cards were banned, the format was less of a power level than it is now. And now that the format is as powerful as it is and has these pinnacles of the format sitting on top of it, I think we can start to look at cards that were banned previously and consider unbanning them. Now, what you actually do with that is a different story, but I think my point remains that unbanning is generally better than banning, and
Sure.
It's something to be considered.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, if the utilitarian in me is satisfied, which is that it brings the greatest amount of enjoyment for the most people, then that's fine. I guarantee that unbanning Summer Bloom or Artifact Lands or Twin does not have that end result.
I mean, it might not, but again, like, I'm saying we consider these things. For the record, I am not saying that these need to happen right now and that they would necessarily be good because I have not tested with Summer Bloom. I'm not sure that it is okay, but I think the card...
I will send you a link to the video in case you have forgotten.
I played Amulet Titan when it was legal, and that deck was way too good back then. I don't dispute that at all. What I'm saying is that the format is different now, and maybe it's okay. And I haven't tested it in this current format. So, like,
Okay.
if I played some games with it, I could like right away be like, oh my god, this is way too good. But again, it was legal in a format where the card we're about to talk about and the card people really came here for was not there. And what is that card, Aaron?
Assassin's Trophy.
Would you like to read it for the audience, please?
Oh, God. All right. Assassin's Trophy. Destroy target format.
What?
No, it's no Assassin's Trophy. It's black green for an instant, because why not? Destroy target permanent an opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, untapped, then shuffle their library. So they don't print Stone Rain anymore at 3 mana at sorcery speed.
Yeah.
But they sure as hell will print it at 2 mana at instant speed if you get basic land, which is going to be better than whatever the land, or which is going to be unconditionally worse than the land that was destroyed.
Yes, but like when your opponent does that, they're not getting away, right? Like that's just card disadvantage.
Yes. So, okay, that is like the smallest part of what this card is is doing. So here's the important stuff. The zero level stuff on this card is extremely relevant. The fact that it's 2 mana, the fact that it's instant speed, the fact that it is any permanent, including a land, the path downside, as we have seen repeatedly, is not like it is a downside, but it doesn't keep the card from being played.
Okay.
Right? Nobody's not playing Path to Exile because it ramps your opponent.
Well, so
it just feels a little bit bad if you have to use it early in the game.
Hold on. I would like to say that for the record, people do not play Path because it ramps their opponent. Like, for instance, Reed Duke top-aided, I think it was Pro Tour Guilds of Ravnica, with an Abzan deck. It was an Abzan mid-range, where he was specifically not playing Path for that reason. He hated that it ramped his opponent. And, like, if Reed Duke is making that decision, it's probably right because he's Reed Duke and he knows what's up with, black-green mid-range decks. Now, that said, this is card disadvantage. Like, you are destroying a permanent and giving them a permanent for the cost of a card. So it's like, they aren't down a permanent. They still have the same number of permanents. You are down a card. That said, the card is still probably... The card is very good. I'm not saying that that is not the case. But it is card disadvantage from a strict card count sense. Yes, continue. Just wanted to get that out there.
Okay. So, yes, they have the same number of permanents. It is not the permanents that they want.
Correct.
So, if you said to me, as like a black-green player, which I am, hey, you know how you can't beat Tron?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to, for the low cost of 1 basic forest, I'm going to let you break up Tron for the entire game by surgicaling in this on turn 2. And to me, taking one of my 0% matchups and making it a 60% matchup is fantastic. Done. Sold. I'm in. I'm 100% in. And that is the sort of core of like why this card will be format defining. It is format defining in the sense that it places an outer limit on what it makes sense to spend mana on.
Well, I want to just say for your like Tron example, like you could have already done that. Like you could have already ghost quartered your opponent and surgical them, or like Field of Ruin them and Surgical them. That is something that could have been done before, right?
It could have been done before, and it was done to a certain extent, but like that's not a zero deck building cost.
Well, so
like,
that's
there are certainly times.
Well, but that's what my point was going to be, was that it's not that this effect didn't exist before, but it wasn't so broad, and it caught like if you wanted to have like the Ghost Quarter Surgical Tron, you needed like 6 sideboard slots or something to like reasonably be able to accommodate that, and
Correct.
You needed like, and then it just like cost you in other matchups, whereas like this is just everything in one. Like, it's just all of the things. Like, it's the answer to Birthing Pod I was talking about. Even though that's not there, like, it would be. But it's, an answer to any permanent. Any permanent, It's just going to be so nice for sideboards for an archetype that really needed it, to be quite honest.
I mean, green-black midrange, the reason that I bring it to big events is because with a little bit of homework, I can be prepared for almost anything. And being 2 colors makes it, like, the mana is super smooth. I get to play Ghost Quarters in the main. Like, there are tons of reasons why I choose that archetype as my, like, premier play, competitive play deck. The fact that, like, this is now going to go in that deck makes me have to go, how do I now beat this card? Because people are going to be playing it against me.
Well, so let me just like qualify the statement you said earlier. Green-black was good because you could be prepared for anything, but you could never be prepared for everything, right?
I mean, you could argue that about the entire format, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, like
yes.
You could never be prepared for everything before. You could be very good against something, but you wouldn't be prepared for everything. Like, this actually opens up the potential that you maybe could be prepared for everything. Like, it's probably still going to be very hard to do that, but there at least now is this potential that, like, you have this card that is your, like, kind of get out of jail free card. Like, you can be prepared for whatever crazy thing they're going to do.
Oh, sure. Well, now instead of going, like, Thoughtseize, Dark Confidant, Liliana the Veil, I go Thoughtseize, Dark Confidant, like, other discard spell, Assassin's Trophy, whatever you played, and then, like, untap Tarmogoyf, Liliana the Veil. Let's go. Oh, and I drew a card. 2 cards.
Sure.
That's great.
I mean, it's good. Like, I think...
Nice basic.
I think these decks really needed it, but let's look at what Assassin's Trophy really is going to do for the format.
You can never tap out to play Jace again, and that makes me happy.
I mean, that's wrong, but...
How is that not wrong? How are you magically going to counter this Assassin's Trophy when you are tapped out to play Jace on turn 4?
I'm not. I'm just going to let you kill my Jace. I just 3-for-1'd you. It's great.
Yeah, but you don't have a Jace anymore. You played 4 mana for a Sorcery Speed Brainstorm.
And then a Rampant Growth.
That you had to shuffle away whatever you brainstormed.
Yeah, that's what you want to do with Brainstorm. You want to shuffle it away.
But, like, you're playing it as though it's, like, all upside for you.
That is upside for me. Like, the point of Brainstorm is, like, Brainstorm is not that good unless you have a fetch land, then Brainstorm's, like, busted, right? But it's like, if my Brainstorm just comes with a free Rampant Growth on it, like, that's a pretty good card.
All right, well, ban Jace and then move on.
I mean...
See, look, all I'm saying is you're proving my point.
Anyways. I don't think that you can't tap out to play Jace. I think that there is real cost to tapping out to play Jace now. Like, it is something you have to be prepared for. It's not free.
Yeah, it's not a free roll in the same way that it kind of is right now.
It's true.
Oh man, the fact that this hits lands, like, just really blows my mind. So the first thing that I wanted to do with this, obviously, is, like, play with Leonin Arbiter, which I'm 100% gonna do. Like, because, like, what's better than Strip Mine and Sinkhole, and like, I'm ready for that. So I already have my I got my my Murmuring Bosks, got my Dungrove Elders, got my Gaddock Teague, got my Leonin Arbiters.
I hope you got your Sandstep Citadels too, because this deck sounds like it is a nightmare to make mana for.
It's actually not bad because everything is like it is a green deck that splashes white and black. So like all of your lands produce green mana.
Without fetch lands, though. You're doing this without fetch lands.
Sure.
Yeah, that's hard.
Well, you get I took originally I had Militia Bugler, and then like I heard Cedric Phillips' voice in the back of my head, and he was like, "Cut Militia Bugler." So I cut Militia Bugler, and I put Adventurous Impulse in. And Adventurous Impulse actually does a pretty good impression because it will hit a creature or a land, and that is what you need. And you play Aetherfile too, so it's like not that bad. Like Adventurous Impulse really is quite a good card in this exact instance where you can't play fetch lands.
Okay. This mana still sounds really impossible to me, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt here and believe that you made this work. But
I did.
That's not what we came here for.
That is a very admittedly a very fringe application of this card.
Let's look at what the card is actually doing to the format. Okay.
Yes.
So the first point we have on it, like one of the very obvious things that we kind of already hit on, is that it was always very hard in Modern to have a card be an answer to everything, and really like we don't see very many cards that do this. We see some, and those cards see a ton of play. And like one of the cards that's just an answer to everything is Karn, which is why Tron is very popular. Another card that's kind of like an answer to everything is Cryptic Command, which is why blue decks are popular. Another card that's like kind of like an answer to everything is Thoughtseize, which is why Thoughtseize decks were popular, right? But in general, it's really hard to find these cards that are answers to everything, if you will. So you kind of had to build your decks to have like stuff answered, like, some of it answers some things, or some of it answer another thing, or just not answer anything at all and just be very proactive. And like the decks that were reactive, that were like these black-green decks, these mid-range decks that were actually interested in answering stuff and kind of playing this mid-rangey game, they really felt like they needed a 25-card sideboard. Like you actually felt like that. It felt like it was impossible to build a deck in such a way where you were good against the field. And this deck solves it. I mean, we hit on that. Like, this lets you... Like, it is an answer to everything. Albeit at a cost, but, it's a real cost too. But it is an answer to everything. And in that sense, like, it lets you build your sideboard in a way to kind of complement it instead of having a bunch of 1-0s that you just hope to draw in certain matchups, I guess.
It replaces a lot of things. Certainly. Like I would feel much less bad about not having Fulminator Mage in my sideboard if I had this.
Sure. And I mean, you need, like, having this means you need less disenchants, you need less Fulminators, you need less, whatever, and you can kind of focus on cards that help in matchups that are more specialized, I guess.
And also, like, let's not forget, like, I know everybody's like, oh, man, this is going to kill Tron, blah, 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 this and the other thing. Like, Green-Black Tron was a thing and could very easily be a thing again. Like, that's not an issue. Like, they can just play 4 Llanowar Wastes. They already have 8 color-fixing Mana Rocks. Like, there's a very, very real possibility that everybody's like, oh man, I don't have to worry about them anymore. And then like you go to play your land so you can Assassin's Trophy there, whatever. And they just go, like Forest, Llanowar Waste, blow up your whatever. And then Tron Land, Sylvan Scrying, blah, blah, blah. Like, and then just go off and then Karn you, and then you lose.
Okay. I think that's going to play out very differently, but I would agree with your main point that Tron's not going away, because I don't actually think this is that good against Tron.
No, they never are, right? Like, that's
been my experience with Tron, is like you still just Field of Ruin them, and then they go get a forest, and then you Field of Ruin again, and they go get another forest, and you spend all this time and all this mana Field of Ruining them, and then they just cast their Wormcoil Engine off of like 3 forests and 3 Urza's Mines or whatever. So it's like it doesn't actually beat Tron. It just is like it is a real way to put main deck interaction with Tron in your deck that isn't embarrassing. It's not like you're like it's not your black green deck that had 4 fulminators in it that you got paired against Storm and you're like, well, why do I have all these fulminators? What is going on? You know?
Right. Yep. Been there.
All right.
Definitely been there.
So what's the next thing this is going to do for the format?
Black green based combo decks used to be a thing. Like, used to be a big thing. And one of the limiting factors of any combo deck is how you can answer the answers post board. Having 15 cards to do that is obviously is what it is. Having to make the right choice is the most difficult thing, right? Like, if you brought in your Back to Nature to take care of their Leyline of the Void and their Leyline of Sanctity, and they play a Witchbane Orb and a Grafdigger's Cage, you are a very sad panda because you chose poorly and you got punished for it. This really solves that problem as a sideboard card because you just bring it in. You're like, whatever. Worst case scenario, I blow up a creature land.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty to me is, like, it's never going to be dead, right? It's like, you bring it in, and it doesn't quite catch the hate you're expecting, but then you're not rotting with, like, a Nature's Claim in your hand that doesn't do anything. Like, they play their Teferi, and they're still, like, advancing their game plan. Like, you just answer their Teferi, or you answer their Tarmogoyf for whatever they thought they were going to do, and then just continue about yours, you know?
Yeah, and right, and then you like, untap, play Vizier, and then win the game.
Yep. And then the last thing Assassin's Trophy does that's a very big departure from the norm is that, speaking of Teferi, it keeps high loyalty planeswalkers in check. Like, honestly, if you look at decks in Modern, very few decks have any sort of answer to high loyalty planeswalkers. In fact, the only, like, commonly played answer card, if you will, to planeswalkers is Lightning Bolt, and that only really works on, planeswalkers with low loyalty. And sometimes you can, like, snap bolt, or, like, combine, like, a Lightning Bolt and a creature attack, or something of that manner to kind of take out a planeswalker. But cards like Karn, you play it and go to 10, are just impossible to deal with. And Teferi is kind of along the same lines, where it just, like, goes up to 5, and it gives them mana to protect. And it's like, this being an instant speed answer to those cards is awesome for the format. It makes those cards... It was like a card type that was just a little too good because it just didn't have commonly played answers to it. And now there'll be like this commonly played check to that card type, and that is just a good thing for the format.
Yes. I think that because my caveat to that is because the answer is 2 colors, that it is not going to see necessarily, like, wide enough adoption. Like, it's going to skew just in the other direction. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like any deck can play this.
No. No, you're totally right about that. It's not like every single deck is now going to have an answer to your planeswalkers, but more decks will, if that makes sense.
Sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it means that you don't have to either A, play Dreadbore at sorcery speed in black-red, or pay 3 mana for Hero's Downfall with double black.
Well, and nobody, even though Hero's Downfall, like, arguably was playable at times, nobody ever played it because it just wasn't quite good enough. And, like, that just put the format in this spot where, like, you were actually rewarded for finding high loyalty planeswalkers that you could cast in, like, a realistic strategy. And, like, that's kind of why we see Tron be so good, and that's kind of why we saw, Blue-White start to pick up a lot lately, is that they got to play these high loyalty planeswalkers that were just very hard to deal with. Mm-hmm. And honestly, like, Liliana the Veil and Liliana Last Hope are kind of cards like that, where it's like they're these 3 mana planeswalkers that go to 4. They're just pretty hard to deal with.
Yep. So this sort of brings us to, like, what is the new world that we are going to be living in, and, like, what's the play? The very first play, like, I was not kidding when I made the title of the episode, Play More Basics, because you need to play more basics, right? Like the idea that you play extra basics to like play around Blood Moon is sort of like a running gag, right? Like if you're playing a deck that's so soft to Blood Moon that you have to try and like rebuild your entire mana base as a concession to it to include more basics, then you need to have a better answer to Blood Moon than I can fetch a basic.
Well, and it wasn't only Blood Moon. It was like people, like humans decks are playing like 2 basics right now, right? And a lot of it is a concession to the card Path to Exile, which is a commonly played card, and like 2 was enough. Like you just played 2 basics, and that was like the right number for your deck, right? But past that, it's like, well, you know, the first there was Path to Exile, and that was really commonly played. But like you got away with like the amount of basics people were playing; they were used to it. And then they recently added Field of Ruin, and honestly, like Blue-White is partly good because people don't play enough basics for Field of Ruin. Like I don't think Field of Ruin is respected enough for what it does, I guess. Like people just don't play enough basics to really punish people for using Field of Ruin, I guess. And Field of Ruin quickly becomes like this instant speed, uncounterable 2-mana Manvuli Acid Moss, if you will.
Sure.
And like people just weren't playing enough basics to accommodate that. And even like when Field of Ruin first came out, I remember watching, I think it was Modern Super League, where it was like, I think it was like Reed Duke or somebody good was playing against R&D. And the R&D team was playing black-green mid-range, and the other good team was playing Jund. And it was like they were playing, this Bloodbraid Elf deck. They were going to see how good Bloodbraid Elf was, and the other team was playing black-green with Field of Ruin. And the Jund deck didn't have a mountain in it. Like, they just weren't respecting Field of Ruin enough. And it cost them a bunch because they just kept getting their red sources Field of Ruin.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that's a real thing. And it's like, you have to respect these things. And this is just more of that effect. So it's like, well, you already were supposed to be playing more basics than you were. And now, like, a card that's going to come in and be one of the more played cards in the format is also encouraging the same thing. So however many basics you have, like, double that. Do more. Find a way to get more basics into your deck right now.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, hey, you know what? If you got a lame duck color, just cut it.
Yep.
Play 2 color decks if you can.
Yeah.
Play more wastes. I think that's going to be like a big gigantic takeaway for Tron. Like however many wastes you were playing, if the number is 0 and you have like Thought Knot Seers in your deck, you need to be playing at least 1, maybe 2.
Well, I mean, that's another thing. Like, are you registering the card Eldrazi Temple in your deck? You better put some more wastes in there. Because you better believe that Eldrazi Temple is getting Assassins trophied. I'm going to put that temple right up there on my mantle.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the, yeah, why are like wastes were $2. We were just talking about this. Like, why are wastes $2 was like a discussion that we like legitimately had on the Discord. And like the fact that they were $2 before is now like their relative value in terms of actual playability is now much higher.
Agreed.
So if you're still hoarding wastes from BFZ, good on you, because they'll probably be like $3 or $4.
That's kind of awesome. I have like 20 of them.
Yeah, I have like a bazillion of them because I bought a fat pack.
Oh, nice.
Like right at the beginning, so I have like a, half a sleeve of them.
Nice.
So.
All right, next thing Assassin's Trophy is doing to the format. Mana sinks and resilient threats just got a ton better than they are right now. Like, mana sinks were okay in the format, but you didn't really see that many played. But, like, having mana sinks to punish Path to Exile decks is nice. Like, when you had them, you could really feel it. It was great to have those things. It was hard to, like, really build your deck with that in mind because, like, while you would see Path to Exile decks, they weren't a huge meta share. They just, were a deck you would play against. So Path kind of got this, like, free pass where it's not a free pass. Like, obviously giving the land is still a punishment, but you kind of got this pass in the sense that, like, not every deck was built to beat the Path effect. So it's like you weren't as punished because their curves are generally lower. But I think in Modern, with Assassin's Trophy and Path all kind of doing the same thing and all being in different decks, people are going to start to play more mana sinks, and that's going to be great. So what are some examples of this, to be a little clearer, I guess?
I mean, Tireless Tracker is like the slam dunk as far as I'm concerned. Like, Tireless Tracker is already like arguably one of the best creatures ever printed. The fact that that Assassin's Trophy being used against you, like that's also, let me just sidebar for 1 second about the way that this card is worded. There was somebody asked the question of Mark Rosewater, why is Assassin's Trophy only able to target permanents your opponent's control? And his sort of like off the cuff answer was, it makes it so you can't misclick like in digital. And people were like, blah, 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 blah. If this card could blow up your own things and get a basic land, it would be like next level ridiculous. So like, while I'm sure that there is a portion of it that was certainly a concession to like digital implementation, the fact that this can't like blow up your own lands to get you another land, an untapped land at instant speed, is thank you lucky stars for whoever made that change.
Yeah, that's just a good thing. The card would be way... I mean, the card's already really good. It would be a lot better if it could hit your own stuff, too.
But yeah, so being on the other side of the table from this, if you have a tireless tracker, like the fact that it will give you a trigger is like just great. It gives you a trigger and half the mana to crack it.
Well, I mean, just one thing for mana sinks is just card draw is a mana sink in general, because you spend mana to draw the cards, and then you have a bunch of stuff to do with the mana that you have extra of, right? Like, you just drew cards, you can cast them, whatever. Mm-hmm. So Tireless Tracker is just that whole package. Like, one, like, they can't Assassin's Trophy something else when you have a Tireless Tracker in play, because it's going to get you a clue, too. So, like, that's off the table. They have to kill Tracker. And then, past that, like, Tracker was already good. It's just, Tracker's going to be really good. Another mana sink in green, Scavenging Ooze. Scavenging Ooze, not as good, but it is, a commonly played card already that, has mana sink capabilities, something you can do with it. I'm not saying like, oh, you need 4 Scavenging Ooze, but, it's the type of card that gets a little better. If they want to, Assassin's Trophy or Scavenging Ooze, it's not the end of the world. You traded 2 for 2, you got a land, or 2 mana for 2 mana, card for card, but you got a land out of the deal. You might have got an activation already. It's not the end of the world. And then some resilient threats that might start to creep back in. Thragtusk and Kitchen Finks, both great to get Assassin's Trophy, because you don't lose them, and then you still get a land for your troubles.
Yep, and if you are the Tron player who's playing Thragtusk post board, like Thragtusk and then having them mana fix you into Wormcoil Engine, seems great.
I mean, even like, if you play your Thragtusk in the Assassin's Trophy, next turn you can cast your card, without Tron, which is great.
Let's see, Walking Ballista, the world's greatest mana sink. What a ridiculous card.
Yeah, Walking Ballista already a played card without this even in the format. And
yeah, I
mean, it's an awesome mana sink already. Another kind of 2-for-1 there of mana sink and resilient threat, Hangerback Walker. So you spend your extra mana each turn. Resilient against getting Assassin's Trophied. Just very good against the card Assassin's Trophy. I think that's a card that's going to pick up a little bit.
Yes, and people should have already been playing it, because it's generically good against the kind of decks that this is going to go in.
Yep.
So I think that like playing Hangerback, there are a few things that feel as good as playing Hangerback Walker against Jund, because it's just immensely frustrating for them to deal with.
Oh yeah, very annoying, for sure.
And if you think that you're not going to be playing against Jund with 4 of these in the main deck, you are 1,000% wrong.
Yeah.
Like, even if it doesn't last, even if the correct number ends up to be like 2 in the main and 2 in the side or something like that, like week 1, it's going to be a tough row to hoe.
Well, even
on the other side,
even if like Jund isn't playing 4, like I can promise you right now just how good this card is. It's gonna just day 1 immediately be like a top 50 most played card in Modern, and quickly creep up. And I mean, I would not be shocked if a month after Guilds of Ravnica's release, this is a top 10 played card in Modern. That might be a little far. Maybe it's like top 20, but honestly, if you told me a month after release this is a top 10 played card in Modern, I would not be shocked.
Right. Yep. I would agree with that. I mean, honestly, just like the fact that it kills Celestial Colonnade and isn't a Terminate is great.
Well, it actually works really well with Liliana the Veil in that scenario specifically, because like one thing that's really awkward with Liliana currently is you have to like leave an answer to in your hand to beat the Colonnade, because you can't be empty-handed and beat a Colonnade, and Liliana wants you to be empty-handed. And so like you'll get in these spots where it's like, all right, I have a Terminate, I drew a Liliana, I've got 5 mana, all right, I'm going to play my Liliana, I guess go, because if I just plus, then I discard my Terminate, and it just animates Colonnade and kills Liliana, so I don't get anywhere. But it's like, oh, well, all right, I can just Assassin's Trophy or Colonnade, play my Liliana plus up, start attacking your hand, like, I'm good to go. And it's like, you don't have to wait for them to animate, it's just all right there for you.
Yep. Yeah. Celestial Colonnade.
All right.
What a card.
What's another good colorless threat we got here?
I'm unclear as to why you put Emrakul on this list. Please explain.
Well, one, Emrakul is Emrakul the Promised End is an underplayed card in Modern right now. It's an incredibly powerful card that should see more play. 2, it's a little expensive. It's definitely a little expensive, but you're getting ramped now, so it's a good place to put some mana. And 3, it's got protection from the card. It can't get Assassin's Trophied.
Is that how deep we're going? Because you think I will not find a way to put Petrified Woodkin in a deck? Because I will.
I mean, if you want to be sure, yeah, go for it. But all I'm saying is, like, Emrakul already should be seeing more play than it does. Like, this card with not that much work in Modern can be like an 8 mana play that just like beats your opponent. When you have Tron lands and like, you know, you can put some extra work in, you can get this card down to costing 5. And it's an Eldrazi in like a format where you can play Eldrazi Temple. Like, this card's a lot better than people remember. Like, it got banned in Standard. This card's really good. So
yes.
I think it should see more play than it does. And part of the reason it doesn't see as much play is just because it's expensive. But if you're getting ramped in like 50% of your matchups, I mean, maybe that's aggressive, but if you're getting ramped consistently, like, this card gets a lot better.
Yeah. And hey, you know, same Petrified Woodkin, same thing. 7 mana doesn't seem so crazy.
Fair.
Oh man, how sick would a Petrified Woodkin reprint be? It was originally printed in Guild Pact.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Aaron. I don't know what that card does.
Okay, so Petrified Woodkin is 6 and a green for an Elemental Warrior. It says Woodkin. It is not a tree folk for some reason. That's fine. Can't be countered. Great. Has Bloodthirst Axe. It is a 3/3, and it has protection from instants. It is the only other card that I'm aware of that has ever been printed that has the text protection from instants.
Okay.
So look, if you're in the market, yes, there were 2 cards ever printed that have the text protection from instants. Emrakul the Promised End, Petrified Woodkin. Petrified Woodkin did it first for a similar mana cost too, which is kind of weird. Anyways,
look,
I mean, don't play Petrified Woodkin.
I was gonna say, given the option, I'll take the 13/13 over the 3/3.
You sure with the free Mindslaver?
Well, and the flying and the trample, but
and the flying and the trample.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And the cost reduction.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you're probably right. That's probably the correct decision. I'm just saying it's possible.
Fair.
It's a modern. It
is modern legal card. Okay. Valid.
Throwing it out there. Banefire. I just always liked Banefire. Like, uncounterable face you for 5 seems good.
Yeah. I mean, look, if blue's going to be good,
nothing fancy.
Good.
Nothing fancy to say about that, right? Like,
no, I mean, you got extra mana, use it.
K command. Oh, just getting stuff back with K command.
Yeah, I mean, it's like card draw. It's like the red black card draw. But
sure.
So like, I kind of separate them out by colors. So like, if you're looking just straight red, you kind of want to get some stuff to, you know, get prepared for Assassin's Trophy. Banefire is a good one. Another card that you know, doesn't see very much play right now because it's not great, but the burn decks are definitely interested in is Shard Volley. And it's like, it hurts you a little too much to sacrifice that land currently. So, you'll see a lot of burn decks that maybe play like 1 or 2 Shard Volley, and it's like, yeah, you'd love another Lightning Bolt in burn. Like, the deck would definitely be interested in that, but sacrificing the land, just a little too expensive. But, if everybody's giving you free lands, like, put them to use. Get that extra free Lightning Bolt,
Sure. Moving on.
So, for blue cards that you might see a tick up in Snapcaster Mage, Snapcaster Mage is a great mana sink because it's just an expensive card when you're flashing back expensive sorceries and instants. But it also just gives you more copies of Assassin's Trophy, which is great because the card gets better in multiples as opposed to worse. Mm-hmm. And then just in blue, any card draw. If you want an X spell, Sphinx's Revelation, sure. But any card draw is going to be good against decks playing Assassin's Trophy.
Oh, that's what it was going to be. Direfleet Daredevil.
Yeah, Direfleet Daredevil is a good one, for sure.
Like, Direfleet Daredevil in a world where, like, there's not always going to be a good spell that you want to, like, flashback from your opponent's graveyard. If everybody's playing Assassin's Trophy, that's always going to be a good spell. Like, that's going to be a tight hit off of Daredevil every time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good call. All right, so in white, it was kind of hard to come up with, some value threats. And then you think about it a little bit. A great mana sink that does not see enough play is Eldrazi Displacer. And, once you have this card, tutoring up free wastes for you, so it's, like, always fixed for Eldrazi Displacer's ability, you can start activating it more and more, and the card just gets better the more you can activate it. I think that's a card, primed to see a little bit of a resurgence. They might Assassin's Trophy the first Displacer, and then the next one you play gets way better, so that is definitely an interesting card. Thraben Inspector is a good one in the sense that it plays well with Eldrazi Displacer, but it also gives you a clue, and it's like the type of card that no one's ever going to want to kill with it. It's like if you got your Thraben Inspector Assassin's Trophy, it's like you got a clue and a free land out of your 1-drop. That's awesome. So that's the type of card you could be interested in. Maybe Humans decks pick that up. And then Militia Bugler, just drawing you like an extra body in white that you can cast, always going to be good against the trophies. So
sure,
I like those.
Titans. Ugh, Titans.
Yeah, man.
Woof.
We haven't seen the Titans in a while, but they might be primed for a comeback right now.
I mean, like, Primetime is always going to be there, and, like, Frost Titan isn't good enough, and Sun Titan already has a deck, but it's just not, it is not generically powerful enough. Like, Sun Titan sees play in the Emeria decks, but, like, people just play Primetime, and then Panza plays like 1 or 2 Inferno, like 1 Inferno Titan on the side, I think.
Well, but that was because you weren't getting ramped enough to cast them. It's like, if we're talking about we want resilient threats, or like threats with like good ETBs, and we're in a world where you have slightly more mana than you did before, then the Titans are better than they were before, because they're like, the Titans were kind of R&D's move to like, oh, we're going to make a 6-drop, we're going to make 6-drop creatures that are good against Doomblade. And, like, Assassin's Trophy is a Doomblade, but it's worse than Doomblade against the Titans because it gives them mana, And it's like, what feels terrible is, like, killing somebody's creature and then they untap and play a Grave Titan. And then it's like, well, I can kill the Grave Titan, but, now they have freaking 2/2/2s and, I'm going to be behind. And it's brutal. And it's like, red decks before that curve, they couldn't top out an Inferno Titan. It was a little too expensive. Well, now maybe you can actually cast Inferno Titan. Maybe that's a pipe dream. Like, maybe your deck can't quite get that high, but it's like these cards weren't playable before, really, and like now they might be.
Could be. Speaking of 5 and 6 drops, Scarab God. I want to believe. I'm not convinced, but I want to believe.
Look, Scarab God might not be good enough. That one is more speculative, but it is good against the card Assassin's Trophy. I mean,
sure.
If you have to Assassin's Trophy a Scarab God, it's just getting worse for you. Like, that's going to come back, and then the next time they play it, they're going to have more mana, and then eventually they're just going to start being able to reanimate everything you Assassin's Trophy'd before. It's kind of this inevitability against, decks that are playing Assassin's Trophy. So, I mean, that's one to consider. But more like along that line, recursive graveyard threats are great against Assassin's Trophy. What feels horrible is Assassin's Trophying a Bloodghast. Like, I don't even think that does anything, right? Like, you can't even do... Like, you kill it, and then they get a basic, and the blood comes immediately back.
You kill it and then get a landfall trigger.
Yeah, so that doesn't even do anything. And then, like, again, like, killing, like, prized amalgams with it is just horrible.
Yeah, don't do that. I guess if there's any cautionary tale that you take away from this episode, it's do not Assassin's Trophy a Bloodghast.
Yeah, so, like, these graveyard decks are definitely due for, like, a little bit of a pickup, because they get this awesome card that's good against the hate that people would play against them, and then on top of that, like, the card people are now going to be playing more of is terrible against their deck. So, I mean, those are interesting for sure.
Yeah. So the stuff that gets worse is basically everything else. Like, there's now a Dice to Doomblade for every single permanent that is not indestructible.
Sure.
And that turns out is a lot of things.
Yeah,
Planeswalkers.
I mean, you're right on that, but, like, certain things get hit harder than others.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, one of the biggest losers is going to be Leyline of the Void and Leyline of Sanctity, because you're not... if the first one doesn't win you the game, or, like, pretty close... hard casting a Leyline of the Void on turn 7 is sad. It is not something that you want to be doing with your time in Modern. So just having a ready answer to the first one is going to make them a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, this card, Assassin's Trophy, is very good at, like, eliminating the one piece that's beating you, right? So you don't care if they get a basic if your graveyard deck now gets access to the graveyard. And, I mean, that's why it's amazing. Those decks.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, you got a basic Conflagrate for 12, you're dead.
Oh, Conflagrate is a great one. That is one I missed. Well, it's not really a mana sink against Assassin's Trophy, but it can be, like, if you had it in your hand, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's... Conflagrate's a generically powerful card. In the decks that it is played in, it's pretty crazy.
Sure. So one type that I think gets worse, but is actually, like, a pretty interesting case study is Planeswalkers. So Planeswalkers kind of have the I'm okay against Doomblade effect, where, you know, you play them, you get your value out of that first activation, and then they die. And in general, Planeswalkers don't quite pass it, because usually the way Planeswalkers win is over time. Like, it's very rare that the first activation of the Planeswalker actually wins the game. It's just not really how they're designed. So I think Assassin's Trophy is going to be good against them in that sense, but... like, if people are playing a lot of Assassin's Trophies, it'll be good to have Planeswalkers in your deck, because they're generally big and splashy cards. So it's like, you know, if they Assassin's Trophy, your 2-drop, all of a sudden you can cast, you know, Jace on turn 3. So that is real. We'll have to see how that one plays out. That's more one to keep an eye on. What else?
I can see that.
What else we got as big losers, Aaron?
Blood Moon.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Like, Blood Moon asterisk. Blood Moon if people actually take our advice. And play
Sure.
more basics.
I think they will, though. Like, in that world, like, Blood Moon suffers huge, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's so much, like, you can't play now, like, Blood Moon in Jund, which was a thing, like, briefly. You really can't do that anymore. And play this, and of the two, I would rather have the flexibility of Assassin's Trophy over, like, the occasional lockout of Blood Moon. So,
well, then, like, on top of that, like, Blood Moon was powerful because it was, like, impossible to get off the table. There's just very few things that answered the card type enchantment in Modern. And, like, now, like, a bunch of decks have this 4-of card that just kills your Blood Moon.
yes. Also, it's kind of like a side note to the side note. This card makes Tarmogoyf a lot better in sort of like a sly way, which is having an answer to any type of permanent means that there are more types of permanents that are going to be in the graveyard. So,
well, I think Tarmogoyf decks will appreciate this, but I also think that means people are going to play less of those permanents now. Like, part of the allure to playing these enchantments was that they just couldn't be answered, and now it's like, why are you playing enchantments when every deck has a 4 way to answer them in the main deck. Like, they better be freaking good.
Sure, and sometimes they are.
Sometimes they are. That's true.
That's and you're also like, they're also not always going to have the answer.
I mean, that is true. That is true. But I think in general, like, the random permanent types are kind of losing here.
Sure. I mean, the stuff that like non-creature artifacts and enchantments certainly get worse in this world.
Yep.
Because there's something that's not abrupt decay that can answer them for 2 mana at instant speed.
Yeah. Another card type suffering is just like large creatures in general. Delve threats, essentially. Delve threats were a big one because a lot of people are playing Fatal Push, they're playing Lightning Bolt, and those cards didn't answer delve threats at all. And this card is always going to answer them. So, while delve threats it's not like they're unplayable, they just are worse than they were before. And kind of the same thing for Tarmogoyf and Death Shadow. They were kind of this card type that just, kind of got around Bolt, kind of got around damage-based removal. It's like, well, now more decks are going to be playing this card that just can answer them very easily and at like a mana comparable rate. I was going to say, and I think the big takeaway you want to get from this is Assassin's Trophy is good in the sense that it answers anything. So, like, if your card gets answered 1-for-1 with it, it's going to be a good trade for the opponent because they cast... Presumably that card was good for you, so they cast Assassin's Trophy to get rid of it, right? But it's bad in the sense that it is card disadvantage, right? So, like, if you want to attack people playing more Assassin's Trophies, the way to do that is to outgrind them, essentially. To be, like, make the downside be a very real downside. And, like, you can do that by, playing more expensive spells, putting the mana to work, and you can do that by, making them kill something that already got value. It's like, if you play... Like, maybe, a card that might see some more play, Rogue Refiner, just like ETB draw a card. If you have to Assassin's Trophy a Rogue Refiner, that feels horrible. And that's just kind of like a good strategy to kind of start picking up to start attacking a format that's going to play this card more often.
Well, I think one of my prediction for the first place that you're going to see this is in a lot of Jund decks, obviously. But the natural predator to those kinds of Jund decks is Abzan decks. Because... Lingering Souls, Siege Rhino.
Oh yeah, Lingering Souls is a great one. That is a card that's very, very good against Assassin's Trophy.
Like they already had they were already trying to play an attrition game, and like even though this is kind of an attrition card, it is less. It's like a 0.75 attrition versus like a true 1-for-1. So like they will play it, but if it comes down to it and they have to like Assassin's Trophy your Siege Rhino, that is a very bad exchange. Like it's mana positive for them, but they still got Lightning Helixed and they're still ramping you. And like in this theoretical like Abzan deck, I would definitely be playing Bloodghasts. Like Bloodghast, Lingering Soul, Liliana of the Veil, Siege Rhino, Kitchen Finks, like, forget it. That is lights out for our Jundi friends.
You missed the best card, man. Come on.
I shudder to think what is the best card.
Tireless Tracker, we hit on it.
Oh, sure.
Get that in there. That is the big winner, I think. That card is going to see so much more play than it sees now, and it's totally justified.
Yeah, the card's great. It is easily one of the best creature printed in the last 5 years. It is probably one of the top 10 creatures of all time. I'm pretty comfortable making that statement.
Was Innistrad in the last 5 years? No, it was longer than that, right?
No, it was more than that.
All right, then I'll agree with you.
Were you just trying to edge your boy Snapcaster Mage in there?
Snapcaster is better than Tireless Tracker. I maintain that. Snapcaster is the best creature in Modern, bar none. But let's get to MOAR Company. Let's talk some black-green combo. Primed for the rise.
Yes. All right. So I'd put MOAR Company back together. And I originally put it back together because I found a replacement for Murderous Redcap. I was looking for something else, and I happened to find this card, Hissing hissing something or other. It's from Alara, and it's basically like it's 2 and a red for a 3/1 lizard, and whenever another creature dies, you may have hissing iguana deal 1 damage to target player. So one of the problems that I was sort of like conceptually having with playing this deck again is you couldn't hit you couldn't hit your kill card off of Collected Company, and that like always sat like wrong with me. So I was like, all right, what can I use instead of Murderous Redcap? And Hissing Iguanar does that.
Sure.
And then I was like, really excited about it. I built like a Jund version of the deck that had like a red splash for that, lightning bolt, a couple other things, and it was super cool. And then I think it was you, but I'm sure somebody else when I posted it.
No, it wasn't me. It was not me.
It wasn't you.
Okay,
so somebody in the Discord was like, "Why aren't you just playing Blood Artist?" And I was like, "Oh right, that card exists." So then I took the lizard out, even though I did get to kill a bunch of people on Magic Online with it, and it was very satisfying.
I believe that.
So I was like, all right, Aristocrats is absolutely one of my favorite like archetypes anyways. I'd been meaning to build an Aristocrats deck, but not like the sort of standard Aristocrats with like Doom Traveler and all that kind of stuff. I was like, I want to be able to combo kill because, I don't know, every once in a while I just like to play this deck. So I fire it up and I start putting it together. All the black-green good stuff mana base, like everything's smooth. You get to run Field of Ruin, Ghost Quarter main because you're only 2 colors. Viscera Seer. I have 1 Bloodthrone Vampire in as an extra sack outlet. It is not as good. It will do in a pinch, and no one is going to like blind Pithing Needle Bloodthrone Vampire.
You know, that's acceptable. I like it.
So like, you know, or like Surgical Extract. Like if your Viscera Seers get Surgical Extract, you still have a way to win the game. I originally had Blood Artist. I ended up going with Zulaport Cutthroat instead. Same mana cost. It is a 1/1 instead of a 0/1. It only triggers on your creatures dying. Whereas Blood Artist is any creature. Blood Artist targets, Zulaport Cutthroat doesn't. So I sort of weighed all of those factors against each other and decided that Cutthroat was probably the way to go. 4 Maliras is still like I forget that there are certain decks that a Malira just literally turns them off.
Yep, this is a thing.
And I played against a couple of those, and like not even thinking, I was just like, oh, all right, like turn 1, like Noble Hierarch, whatever, like turn 2, Viscera Seer, Malira, and they just scooped, and I was like, what is going on here? And then I see Inkmoth Nexus, and I was like, oh, that's right.
Yep, your deck doesn't work anymore.
Like, your deck literally does nothing. So that's that. I have 2 Wall Roots. It's just a good ground holder. Like this, the Wall of Roots as an X5 could very easily be Sylvan Caryatid if you wanted. I like the 5 toughness. I have Amid Eternals in for my my beater squad. So Amid Eternal is a 3 mana 5/5 zombie crocodile demon. Tremendous type line. It has Afflict 3, which Afflict is an underappreciated mechanic in my mind, and I will explain why in a minute. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you put a -1/-1 counter on it. And then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you remove all the -1/-1 counters from it. So the reason that I like it, and I like it in this deck specifically, is having a 5/5 on turn 2 is very good. The Afflict mechanic makes this card, like, forces your opponent to make a choice. And so afflict is whenever the creature becomes blocked, the defending player loses 3 life. So no matter what, your opponent is getting bolted if they block this guy. If they don't block him, then they sort of kick the can down the road because they may only take 2 damage from that hit, but then it goes back to being a 5/5. And they have to, like, push the rock up the hill again to try and, like, get it down to a manageable size or kill it. So just like I said, except against exactly Storm, where they're just casting like 4 or 5 spells in a turn anyways and it dies. It's just a very good beater. With Melira in play, it can't get -1/-1 counters. So it's literally just a 5/5 that if your opponent chooses to block it, they take 3.
Okay, that's pretty good. I like that.
Because like I know you were skeptical.
I was gonna say, yeah, I was not buying very much of that. The Melira thing was kind of sweet.
Yeah. And then I have Liliana Heretical Healer in here. I've been looking for a home for her for a very long time because it is a very powerful card. It requires a very specific kind of set of conditions to work properly. So I have 3 of them. I play 1 Fleshbag Marauder. Fleshbag Marauder, generically good. Like 3 mana, 3/1 that makes both players sack a creature. Fleshbag Marauder with Liliana Heretical Healer, also very good. Like if you needed to, you could Liliana play, like have Liliana play Fleshbag Marauder. She flips off the Fleshbag Marauder trigger, so that's 1 edict. And then she flips, and you could -3 get back the Fleshbag Marauder and do it again and kill the zombie token and have a 3/1 and 2 edicts in a turn. Like, that is a play that I have made.
Yeah, it's strong.
It also, like, it triggers off legendary rule too, so extras aren't necessarily dead in your hand. The biggest thing though is she comes in with 3 loyalty. Her minus can get back any of the combo pieces that have already been killed. So you play her, she, whatever, somebody dies, or you can even you can sack Viscera Seer to itself to flip her and then -1 to get it back. You can, if you play out if you're trying to curve out and combo and somebody kills your Melira, you flip her -2. There you go. Boom. Here's your Melira back. Combo off. Kill you.
Yeah, I like it. One of my big problems with this deck has always been that it just didn't have enough slots. It kind of had the same problem where it was you need to play some answers for Tron, so you got Fulminator Mages in the sideboard. And you need to play some answers for cards that are really, really good against your deck, for instance, Anafenza, or a Scavenging Ooze. So you got to have some Path to Exiles in the sideboard. And you need some answers to Leyline of the Void. So you need, you just need all these cards in your sideboard, and it just never felt like you had enough. And then when you did fill your sideboard with all these answers, and you need hate cards to beat decks that are faster than you, maybe like a Storm deck or like a KCI deck, right? And against decks that aren't doing those things, you would get out-grinded by the blue-white deck playing Terminus. But now that you can play Assassin's Trophy, this deck sounds awesome to me. It's you have a 15-card sideboard, but really you have an 11-card sideboard where you just have 4 Assassin's Trophies in there. And then you got to figure out what to do with those 11 cards. But I think it's possible to build it now where it's all right, Assassin's Trophy answers so many things. Let me get some grindy stuff in this sideboard, and let me get some hate cards for the decks that are faster than me or combo better or whatever. And I think I can be real now.
Right. And this was before I even knew that Assassin's Trophy existed or was going to exist. I was playing this deck successfully without that. So having that stuff, having that card come out, I think really gives this deck the ability to compete on a very high level. And then also Eternal Witness, Kitchen Finks, and then 4 Cocos for Quarter Calling. So you can play Toolbox out of the side. I have like just a bunch of randoms. I've like Kite Sail Freebooter in here in the side because it's just good, cheap creature. Plague Mare, Tyler's Tracker, Rex Sage, Runic Armasaur, a card that you should definitely have some of because like 3 mana 2/5 that draws you a bunch of cards. Strong. He's a very good boy. He's a good dinosaur. So yeah, I really like this deck. Also, like, it's pretty cheap. You know, you really the only expensive cards in it are if you want to play the Noble Hierarchs, which if you have access to them, you should.
No, you should play Birds of Paradise. It's better.
Really?
Hey, you're trying to cast Liliana Heretical Hero, dude. It's a double black 3-drop.
Sure, but I mean, like, you can just play like 4 Blooming Marsh and 8 fetch lands and Field of Ruin and like 4 Overgrown Tombs.
I mean, you're a green-black deck. It only makes half of your mana colors.
But sometimes you attack with a 6/6 Amity Eternal.
I mean, sure. Like, I would probably be playing both. That's just me. But I think I would start with Bird.
Sure. So there you go. Even cheaper. Right? Like Viscera Seer's dirt cheap. Birds of Paradise cheap compared to Noble Hierarch. Like Bloodthorn Vampires like common. Zulaport Cutthroat is like a penny. The Maliras are a couple bucks. Wall Roots dirt cheap. Amity Eternal if you wanted to play them. And you can certainly play like pick a beater. Like it doesn't really matter. Like I play this one specifically for its synergy with Malira. And I also irrationally like it. But could be anything. Pick your poison. Fleshbag Marauder, bunch of reprints. I mean, even Liliana Heretical Healer, I think is like around $10. Coco Cord, Kitchen Finks, I think is still a little bit pricey. But as far as like competitive modern decks go, I'd be very surprised if this one cost you more than like $400, and that is very cheap.
Yep.
So it's budget, it's good, it's fun. Like you get to play a lot of neat cards. I had somebody who was playing Jace the Mind Sculptor get salty about getting comboed out by a like literally 10-year-old combo, and I was like, do you really get to be salty about this? Like you're like, I get it. I understand that you didn't want to lose, but also like flip side, you're playing Jace Terminus deck. So I don't know.
Oh, come on. Say what you meant there.
You have everything. You've literally got everything.
Yeah, no.
The world is your oyster, and you couldn't beat this pile of draft comments.
There you go. That's what you mean. You had a Jace and you got beat because you are not as good as my sweet deck.
That's right.
There it is.
You got out deck built.
All right, man.
Kind of. Or I just got like lucky off Coco hit.
I think we need to wrap this up. We're already over 2.5 hours.
Well, a lot of that's going to get cut out. But
still,
regardless of which, yeah, you're not wrong. So before we get to the Spice Rack, you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/Turn One Thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at T1 Thoughtseize. Zach is at A22EN. You can watch a stream at twitch.tv/T1 Thoughtseize, sponsored by our friends at Card Hoarder. You can see our YouTube videos at youtube.com/Turn One Thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can read my columns at blog.cardkingdom.com. You can become a member of the Thoughtseize Cabal at patreon.com/Turn One Thoughtseize, all spelled out. And of course, you can see all of our content on turnonthoughtseize.com. The Spice Rack card for this week is Abundance. So this card, I know that you do not fully appreciate this card because you are not a devotee of the grind in the same way that I am.
I was going to say, I love me some value. This card is just not that good in my opinion.
So
no,
Abundance
that's not fair.
is
it is a good card.
Green.
It's not the kind of value I like.
There you go. So it's 2 green for an enchantment, and it says, if you would draw a card, you may instead choose land or non-land. and reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card of the chosen kind. Put that card into your hand. Put all other cards revealed this way on the bottom of your library in any order. So, abundance in a like deep grind deck, like Life from the Loam, Worm Harvest, Flame Jab, like Seismic Assault, like deep grind. This allows you to always draw another land if you need another land, or gas if you need anything else.
Okay, I was going to say, that whole thing doesn't quite get me there, but you know what's interesting to me about this card is, what if, like, you know, you were playing a game earlier and someone maybe killed a bunch of your stuff and gave you like a bunch of free lands, right? You know, maybe they had like a removal spell of sorts that was like killing your creatures earlier, and it just, you know, put a bunch of lands on the battlefield for you. And you didn't want to draw any more lands that game. Well, you know, this might do that.
Yeah, it's a deceptively powerful effect in decks where you like only get one draw anyways. If you were to like, I want to experiment with this in like a blue-green control kind of shell where like you can use an opt to get anything you want. Like, not anything, but like you get to pick a category, and if you are building your deck in a way to take advantage of that, then you can just literally always get something that is of a type that you want.
Sure.
So it is an extremely powerful card. It is super neat. It is super cheap. It was printed in 10th edition, as very nice Rebecca Gay art. It was originally printed in Urza's Saga, I believe.
That sounds right to me.
And then it had a like commander printing or something like that. But beautiful card, really interesting. It really takes a couple of games with it before you appreciate the power of the effect. But just getting to be like, I don't want to draw a land, and you just do it, and then you don't draw a land, is great. Or you draw another land for your Worm Harvest, so you can have 14 worm tokens on the battlefield, because retrace is a gloriously silly mechanic.
That's fair.
Which you'll get to
even
faster when people are ramping you with Assassin's Trophy. Boom. Trying to blow up my lands. Boom. Worm Harvest. Worm Harvest. Worm Harvest all day. All right. Let us put a bow on it. We will catch up with you next time. Thank you so much for listening.
Love you guys.